Well, we are kicking off a new series today. We've got a 6-week series ahead of us called What Defines Us. It's talking about RiverLife's 6 core values. And why are values important? Because all of our choices come from values. We eat at restaurants because we like their food. We hang out with certain friends because we like their company. We support certain causes because we believe in what they're doing. Those are all values. So all of us are driven by values. The only difference between some people and others is some people know the values they're driven in and they're intentional about it, and other people don't. We want to be a church where we are intentionally driven by our values. We've got 6 of them, and we're going to spend 1 week on each core value. Today is acceptance. Going next week, we're going to talk about transformation. After that, we've got relevance, biculturalism, authenticity, and impact. If those words sound interesting to you, if those words sound kind of fascinating, that would be interesting to what a church would look like with those 6 core values, come for the next few weeks. It's going to be a good one. So this week is about acceptance. And our goal in doing this series is twofold. First, our goal is that we share with you what's important to us as a church. So I think that's important. If you're going to wake up on a Sunday morning, come here, spend an hour and 20 minutes, I think it's worth sort of knowing what's important to this place you're going each week. So that's the first purpose. The second purpose is to help you live out that value in your life as well. Because here's kind of the secret, is RiverLife can't be for instance, an accepting church unless we have an accepting congregation. Because you guys are RiverLife. You guys make up the family that is RiverLife. So my desire is also to help you guys learn to live out these values as well. So that's kind of the plan. So we got 6 weeks of this, and I'm excited because in next week, my wife Before is teaching, and then in 3 weeks, our youth director, Al Yang, is going to be teaching. So we got some more teachers in here that are going to be up here at the pulpit sort of sharing their thoughts on these core values as well. So I'm really excited about this. So this week is on acceptance. And acceptance is kind of an amazing thing because we all want it. We all want to be accepted. And it's pretty amazing when we actually experience it. It's pretty amazing when we actually experience being accepted. So for me, one of the most powerful memories I have of that, it was in college. Okay, now in college, I was actually a cheerleader. I know, you can go ahead and laugh. You picture Will Ferrell, Cherry O'Terry at Saturday Night Live. Okay, but I even got a picture of it. So here's a picture of me and our cheerleading squad. Okay, and they're all just white blurs right here, but that right there is me. There you go. Not surprisingly, I tended to be on the bottom of the pyramids. They did not send me to the top. They sent like the little tiny 90-pound girls up to the top of the pyramids. They put me like the football players at the bottom. But I was a cheerleader, and so one of the summers I actually went to cheerleading camp. You know, like Bring It On type camp. Okay? I was one of those guys. Okay? Now, and so this camp was at UW-Madison. It was the first time I'd ever been to the Midwest. Because I grew up in California. I'm not a Minnesota native. I'd never been to the Midwest. Okay? And so I was at the UW-Madison for this cheerleading camp. And at the exact same time, one of my best friends from college he was in Milwaukee at a school doing this summer internship. He was kind of a genius engineering guy, so he was working on these like bike-powered boats, and it was all crazy and wild and fun. But it was the exact same time I was in Wisconsin, he was in Wisconsin. So we decided that we would try and meet up during that summer. It was the summer after my junior year. So I finished my cheerleading camp and we got all of our cheers. Okay! Got all of that done. And he finished his like crazy bicycle boat thing that he was working on, and we met up. So we had plans. His team was staying at a motel out in the middle of nowhere. I wish I could find this motel again, but it literally is just out in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. And now that I live out here, I understand what nowhere, Wisconsin means. Because there's a lot of nowhere in Wisconsin. And so it's this little dinky motel. Okay? And I was going to meet him there. We arranged a time. I had a cab. I had a taxi take me out to the middle of nowhere motel and drop me off. Now, there's a problem with that. This was before the days of cell phones. Okay? And if you don't, when you meet up with someone, if you don't actually end up in the same place, it is impossible to get a hold of each other. I show up at the motel. My buddy Jason is nowhere to be found. Yeah, he's out in California. He promised that he would watch the service. So, hey, Jace, dude, what's up? I'm telling you a story, man. Hey, where were you? Okay? So he didn't show up. I'm sitting at the hotel being like, what am I going to do? I tried to sweet talk the desk and be, hey, can you tell me what this team from the school, and his name's Jason Elsing, and you know, can you tell me what rooms he's in? No, I'm sorry, that's private information. I can tell you he's on the top floor between this set of 10 rooms. Are you kidding me? So I sit in the lobby, and it's like this tiny little lobby. I think like our closet is probably bigger than that lobby is back then. So I'm sitting in this lobby. And again, no cell phones. I'm like reading a book and reading the local travel magazine, and an hour passes by, no Jason. 2 hours pass by, no Jason. I'm still sitting in this lobby. I have nowhere to go. I could call a cab, but where would they take me? I just sit there. I'm figuring he's going to show up any day now. Okay? 3 hours go by, no Jason. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to get some stares now. There's this guy like loitering in the lobby of this cheap motel. 5 hours go by, 6 hours go by, no Jason. I'm like begging the people, could I like use a bathroom? Could you let me into a room? Something? Nothing. So 8 hours go by, and all of a sudden this lady, okay, I will tell you this. If you spend 8 hours in a motel lobby, you begin to see the same people over and over again. And it's not a pretty sight, okay? And so this lady finally walks up to me and goes, hi, we've seen you here all day. Do you need some help? And I'm like, yes, I do. my friend is supposed to come here and I don't know where he is and I can't call him and I don't know where he is. I've been here, I'm bored. And she's like, listen, I'm so sorry. Would you like to come have dinner? You must be really hungry. Because there's not a restaurant in sight. Okay? Would you like to come? And I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And so she takes me, she and her husband, I get in their car, I go back to their house. On the way, she said, hey, listen, our neighborhood is having a block party today. Would you like to join us? Okay. I've never been to a block party before. I walk in and sure enough, they coned off the block. And there they are, they've got like 5 barbecues set up, multiple kegs tapped, they're playing volleyball in the back, the street is filled with people. I was like, what is this mystical place called the Midwest? I'm from Southern California. We don't do that nice of stuff out in Southern California. But this lady invited me into her house, she fed me. We played volleyball, we hung out, her neighbors, and she would go around and introduce me as, hi, I met this guy, he was in the hotel and his friend never showed up and he was stuck there for 8 hours and I felt really sorry for him. And then they're like, hey, have a beer! Sounds like it's been a rough day. And so finally my friend shows up, like later that night. I left the name and number at the hotel and he shows up and he picks me up and we go and we see his little invention that they were working on. But man, I still remember that 25 years ago, I still remember what it felt like to be accepted. Because that is a powerful feeling. That is a powerful feeling to be accepted. And I think for me what made it most powerful is at that time in my life, I'm not sure I would have done the same. I'm not sure I would have picked up a total stranger in a motel lounge. Wow, that sounds really creepy now that I actually say that. Pick up a total stranger in a motel lounge. Woo. But it really touched me. The warmth and friendliness of a stranger. So how about you? How accepting are you? Would you do that? Would you pick up a random stranger that you've seen for 8 hours sitting in all possible positions on one couch in a motel lobby? And would you describe yourself as an accepting person? And what do you think? And, I don't have many conversations sitting across the table with someone going, you know what, I'm afraid I'm too accepting of people, or I'm too loving of people. I occasionally have that conversation, but not too often. You know the conversation I have more often is, why am I so critical? Why am I so judgmental? Why do I get so angry at my parents? Can you relate to any of those questions? How about any of these situations? Any of these sound familiar for you? Okay? I apologize. I'm fighting over a little cold here, so I apologize for the cough. I've got some water up here. We'll see if we can keep this going. So, how about you? Do any of these situations sound familiar for you? You have traditional parents, and you just get frustrated because they don't understand you. They don't understand your goals in life, what you want to do, so you push them away. And you just distance, you just kind of give up and walk away from them. Or maybe your spouse does something that doesn't quite meet your expectations, and you get really critical, and you get disappointed in them. And maybe you go and you correct them and make sure that they see how it's supposed to be done. Yeah, I know you ladies. I know you. Okay? Or how about a friend? You're having a conversation with a Christian friend of yours, and all of a sudden they say, I support gay marriage. And it turns into, and you just kind of explode. It turns into this huge fight. Or how about a cousin? You get this cousin you've never really met, who their family comes visit the house, and he smells like smoke, dresses kind of gangster, you know he's from the hood, and you just all of a sudden make a whole set of assumptions about him. Ever had that feeling? Or how about you're at church, and someone with like purple hair and way too many earrings shows up. You know it's church, so you have to be polite. So you say hi, but you just kind of ignore him after that. Have you ever done that? Have you ever felt that? Or how about that coworker who's just kind of annoying? It's really easy when you get with your other coworkers to kind of trash them, talk them a little bit. It's really easy. Any of those sound familiar? Any of those resonate with what you've experienced? I think for all of us, there have been a time in our life, there have been people in our life where it's hard for us to accept someone else. And we face that question, why is it so hard for me to accept another person? Why is it so hard for me to accept another person? Well, thankfully, the book of Romans has an answer to that question. The book of Romans has a lot of answers. It also has a lot of questions. If you've ever tried to read the book of Romans, it's not an easy read, but it's a powerful read. And so we're gonna actually talk about a passage out toward the end of the book of Romans. But before we do that, I want to give you kind of a big picture overview of what the book of Romans is like. Okay? So, and to do that, I could describe it to you, but I'm going to let someone far more talented than I describe it. And so there's actually a great song by a hip-hop artist named Shai Lin. Any Shai Lin fans out there? You guys? Okay, there we go. Okay, we got a couple. Well, for the rest of you, I'm going to introduce you to a great, amazing hip-hop storyteller. His name is Shai Lin. This particular song is called Gospel Music. It's off an album from the 116 Click called 13 Letters. And this is a song about the book of Romans. And thanks to a very creative guy on YouTube, we also have lyrics up on the screen. So, there you go. That's an overview of the book of Romans. And to give you the short version, the first chapters 1 through 3 of the book of Romans talk about our problem. And that's that we as humanity are messed up by sin. We are hurt and damaged by sin. Okay? Chapters 4 through 11 talk about God's solution to our problem, which is salvation in Christ. And then from 12 to 15, the Apostle Paul talks about how to live it out. And in that last section is the passage we're going to be talking about. How to live out salvation, how to live out God's solution to our problem of sin and selfishness. And that's the section we're talking about today. And now to give you a context, that section particularly talks about a couple things. It talks about some arguments. There are some arguments in the Christian church in Rome about between the Gentiles, in other words, the non-Jews, and the Jews. And that argument was over what food is okay to eat, clean and unclean foods, and then the holy holidays of the Old Testament, of the Mosaic Law. And so there was this infighting basically about how do I live out being a Christian. And so these people were fighting. And so that's the context of what Paul writes chapters 12 to 15 about. Okay? And now before I read our passage, I'm going to give you a really quick, like machine gun bullet list of some of the verses between 12 and 15. To give you, because once you sort of read all of 12 to 14, you'll be able to see very clearly what 15 is all about. Okay, so you ready for this? Here we go. Don't think of yourselves more highly than you ought. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Share with the Lord's people in need. Practice hospitality. Live in harmony with one another. Don't be proud. Don't be conceited. Love your neighbor as yourself. Accept the one whose faith is weak. Why do you judge your brother and sister? Why do you treat him with contempt? Stop passing judgment on one another. Do what leads to peace. That is about half of the statements that all share that common theme that Paul says, you know what? Treat other people really, really well. All of that leads up to 15. And that leads up to the passage that we're going to read. So do you kind of get the picture of what the point Paul's trying to make? He says it over and over and over and over and over again. In fact, there are 71 verses in those chapters. There are 22 commands that he gives. That's a huge amount of this text about treating other people really well. Okay? So let's read our passage. We're going to talk about Romans 15. We're going to talk about Romans 15, 1 to 7. Romans 15, chapters 1, or verses 1 to 7. We who are strong ought to bear with the failings of the weak and not please ourselves. Each of us should please our neighbors for their good, to build them up. For even Christ did not please himself, as it is written, the insults of those who insult you have fallen on me. The you in that case is us. So the insult that fell on us, Jesus said, fell on me. For everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, so that through the endurance taught in the Scriptures, the encouragement they provide, we might have hope. Verse 5. May the God who gives endurance and encouragement give you the same attitude of mind toward each other that Christ Jesus had, so that with one mind and one voice you may glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. And then he sums it up with this statement, verse 7. Accept one another just as Christ accepted you in order to bring praise to God. Romans 15, 1 to 7. So that passage is kind of divided up into 4 sections. He starts off with saying, hey, you guys have a choice. You can do things to please yourself, or you can do things to please others. God wants you to do things to please others, but you have a choice. Second, he says, Jesus was the great example of someone who pleased others and not himself. So Jesus is our example. He gives kind of the thesis statement, and then it says, hey, Jesus is the great example of this. And then he says, in God, we can have the same attitude as Jesus. And then finally he closes with this powerful application statement that says, excuse me, accept one another, just as Christ accepted you, in order to bring praise to God. That's a powerful word, accept. That's a really powerful word. What does that mean? Because today it means lots of different things depending who you're talking to. Okay? If you're in a debate about gay marriage, or with a friend or relative who's gay, accept means You have to agree with me. You cannot disagree with me in any way, otherwise you're not accepting me. To your friend or your relative, your cousin who goes clubbing, to say you have to accept me means you can't say anything about my life choices. You have to accept me. If you're like politics, to the political people, that accept means you have to give in to the Democratic choice. No, the Republicans say no. Democrats, you have to accept the Republican bill. And it means you have to accept or compromise or give in to the other political side. So those are three very different definitions of what accept means. But the problem is, none of those mean what Paul used it to mean. Okay? It's not about agreeing. It's not about just shutting your mouth. And it's not about giving in or compromising. This word accept that Paul used here is this amazing word. Because what it means is it means to welcome another person's presence into yours. Sometimes it can be referred to as welcoming someone into your house. Sometimes it can mean receiving guests. Notice none of those definitions have anything to do with agreeing, believing the same things, compromising. No. This is a relationship term. This isn't a theological term. It's not an intellectual term. It's a relationship term. And the way Paul uses it, when he says, accept one another, what he is saying is, receive others into your presence. Don't shut people out of your presence. That's not accepting. Receiving, welcoming them. That's what this, and I love that definition of accept. I don't really like a lot of the definitions of accept that are happening nowadays, online, in debates in public forum, but I love Paul's definition of accept, and that Greek word that he used. Okay? Because that's to welcome someone with friendliness. So when he says accept one another, he's not saying agree with their lifestyle. He's not saying believe the same things they believe. He's not saying compromise yourself or just give in. What he's saying is receive another person with warmth and friendship. And I think that's why that experience of mine in Wisconsin was so powerful for me. Because I was received into another person's home. Into a stranger's home that kind of took pity on me. And that made a powerful mark. 25 years later, I can still remember that day because it was so powerful. So, is it hard for you to receive people with warmth? What about people who have different political views than you? Different social views? Maybe the ones who are just annoying, or they smell, and you just kind of wish they'd go away. You wish they'd stop commenting on your stuff at Facebook and stop trying to message you. You just want to be left alone. What about those people? Is it hard for you to accept them? And have you ever wondered why? Well, this passage, I believe, has the answer. And it comes in verse 7. Okay, I'll read verse 7 again. Accept one another, and now listen to this, just as Christ accepted you. You know why it's so hard to accept other people? Because we don't really believe God has accepted us. Okay? And that kind of gives the big, powerful statement of this passage. You accept others how you think God accepts you. Let me say that one again. You accept others the way you think God accepts you. So if you don't really believe God accepts you, you're not really going to accept others. And so this idea of accepting people is not actually about people. It's actually about God. It's about you and your relationship with God and what you view God to be, who you view Him to be. Do you believe He accepts you just for who you are? If not, if you have a hard time believing that, chances are you're not really going to want to accept people just as they are. So how do you see God? That's the question. How do you see God? I'm going to give you 3 possibilities here. Okay? First, you believe that God accepts you, but only when you do these things. You go to church, you don't drink, you don't go clubbing, and you're obedient to your parents. If you're a good person and you give to church and you go and you attend and you do church stuff, then God accepts you. But if you blow it on any of those, you believe God's just waiting there to come slam down on you. If that's your belief of God, then that's how you're going to treat other people. You're going to accept and love other people until they screw up. And then when they screw up, the wrath of God is coming out. Then that's when you lash out, and that's when you get critical and judgmental. So if you view God as being, I am accepting you, but you have to do these things, that's how you're going to see other people. Okay? The second option is you don't believe God accepts you. You don't really believe that God loves you. You feel you've just screwed up too much. You've done too many things that there's no way that God accepts you. That's how you're going to treat other people. Those people that you think have screwed up so much, you're going to just cast them away like you think God is doing to you. Those are usually the really hard people. The really hard-hearted, kind of cruel and mean and judgmental people. Okay? The third option is you believe God accepts you, but from a distance. So God's way over here, and you're way over here, and you know He loves and accepts you, but He just does it from a distance. Okay? And so that's how you're going to love other people. You're going to love them, you're going to accept them, but kind of keep some distance. Incidentally, this is kind of me. I don't know where you fall, but my default mode is God's a distant God. I have to work hard to remember that He's a close God. Because accept isn't distance. Accept is get on up close. It's inviting someone into your presence. So when I have to believe that God invites me into His presence, I have to believe that I'm over there and He accepts me to get all the way up in His grill to be accepted up here. So where do you fall? Which of those do you think describes you? Do you believe that God accepts you as long as you're doing all the right things? But the first mistake you made, then bam, God doesn't love you anymore. Or do you believe God just doesn't love you? He doesn't accept you. You've done too much. You've made bad choices. So you're like, surely God cannot love me still. Or do you believe that God accepts you, but He's really distant? Where are you? Now, I want to say one thing to each of those groups. So if you're in that first group, will you believe that God accepts you as long as you do all the right things? I've got some good news for you. Or maybe some bad news, depending on how you see it. But I've got some good news. There is nothing you could do that would make God love you more. There's nothing on that list you could do that would make God accept you into His presence more than He already does. Now for you second groupers, the ones who believe that you've kind of screwed up so much that surely God can't accept you anymore. You kind of have to earn your way up to get back to that first group. I have something to say to you. There's nothing you could do that would make God love you less. Nothing you have done in your past, nothing you will do in your future will make God love you, will make God accept you less.
In other words, his love and acceptance never diminishes based on the mistakes we make. Thank goodness, man, because I'm not sure any of us would be getting any love from God. So God's love and acceptance for you is not based off the choices, the mistakes, the decisions you've made. So there's nothing you can do, nothing so bad or so heinous that God would love you less, that God would accept you less. So that's to the group 2. Now to all my homies and homettes in group 3, along with me. Okay? So for all of us in group 3 that kind of feel God is distant, we're the ones who have to remember that when God accepts us, he accepts us into his presence, really close and really personal. He doesn't accept us from afar. He receives us close to his presence.